I'm Sadie, 28 female. I live in a city I love, in an apartment that took me years of saving to finally afford, working a job as a financial analyst that challenges me every single day. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had built something that was truly mine, a sanctuary from the world, and more often than not, from my own family. But a single act of misplaced trust was about to bring those walls crashing down, forcing me to learn that sometimes the only way to rebuild is to start by tearing something else down first. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My apartment was my pride and joy. It wasn't huge, a modest one-bedroom on the fourth floor of a pre-war building with slightly slanted floors and a radiator that hissed like a cat, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, from the second-hand armchair, I'd reupholstered myself to the sleek, minimalist desk where I crunched numbers for my job, was a testament to my independence. After growing up in a chaotic household where my space was never respected, having a door I could lock was more than just a convenience. It was a symbol of my hard-won peace. My family, however, never quite understood that. My mother, Eleanor, a retired teacher, still viewed me as an extension of herself, someone whose life needed her constant, unsolicited guidance. My father, Mark, a sales manager, was the family mediator, a man who prized peace above all else, even if it meant enabling bad behavior. And then there was my brother, Ethan. At 25, Ethan was still coasting on the fumes of potential. He was a musician, which in reality meant he worked just enough hours as a barista to cover his share of the rent at a crowded apartment with 3 roommates, spending the rest of his time strumming a guitar and dreaming of a record deal that was always just around the corner. He was the golden child, the charming, creative soul who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Any mistake he made was just a part of his artistic journey. Any financial trouble he had was a temporary setback that our parents were more than happy to cushion. The issue of the spare key came up about a month before my life imploded. I was heading out of town for a 10-day work conference in San Diego. It was a huge opportunity, a chance to network and maybe even get noticed for a promotion. My parents were driving me to the airport, a gesture that was less about convenience and more about getting a final hour of parental instruction in before I left. Now, Sadie, have you thought about what would happen if there was an emergency while you're gone? Eleanor began, her voice laced with that familiar tone of manufactured concern. A pipe could burst, there could be a fire, we should have a key just in case. I tried to deflect. Mom, it's a secure building. The superintendent has a master key for real emergencies. It's all taken care of. A stranger? She scoffed. I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing some stranger had access to your home, but your own family didn't. My dad chimed in from the driver's seat. She has a point, sweetheart. It's just for peace of mind. We'll put it in the lockbox at home and won't touch it unless you call and tell us there's a problem. I was already exhausted from a week of preparing for the conference, and I knew this was a battle I wouldn't win. Arguing with them was like punching water. They'd just absorb the blow and reform around their original position. So, against my better judgment, I relented. Fine, I sighed, digging the spare key from my keychain. But this is for emergencies only. Please, I mean it. My apartment is my space. I need you to respect that. Of course, darling, we would never, my mother said, taking the key and slipping it into her purse with a triumphant little smile. That smile should have been my first warning. The conference was incredible. I was on my game, connecting with senior partners, contributing in breakout sessions, and feeling a surge of professional confidence I hadn't felt before. I called home a couple of times, brief check-ins where my parents assured me everything was fine. Ethan's band has a gig tonight, my mom mentioned on one call. We're so proud. He's really making a name for himself. I pictured the dingy bar he usually played at, the audience of 10 people mostly consisting of his roommates and their significant others, but I kept my thoughts to myself. That's great, Mom. Tell him I said to break a leg. For 10 days, I was in a bubble of ambition and optimism. My little apartment, with its hissing radiator and slanted floors, felt a million miles away. I trusted my parents. I believed, naively, that their promise was worth something. I thought that by giving them the key, I was making a mature compromise, placating their anxiety while maintaining my boundaries. I had handed them the literal key to my sanctuary, believing they understood what it represented. I had no idea they saw it not as a tool for emergencies, but as a pass to violate the one place on earth I felt safe. The trust I placed in that small piece of metal was absolute, and its betrayal would be just as profound. I was flying home on a wave of success, ready to step back into my quiet, orderly life, completely unaware that it no longer existed. The feeling of unease started as a faint whisper in the back of my mind. It was my last night in San Diego, and I was packing my suitcase, a mix of excitement to get home and melancholy that the trip was over. I decided to call my best friend Jenna to catch up before my early morning flight. Jenna had been my rock since college. As a paralegal, she was pragmatic and level-headed, the perfect counterbalance to my family's chaotic energy. "Hey, how's the corporate climbing going?" She answered, her voice warm and familiar. "It's been amazing," I told her, "but I'm so ready to sleep in my own bed. I miss my quiet little apartment." There was a brief pause on her end, just a beat of silence, but it was enough to make my stomach clench. "Jenna, you there?" "Yeah, sorry," she said, her tone suddenly shifting. "Just got distracted. Hey, did you hear about the noise complaint in your building a couple of nights ago?" My heart rate quickened. "No, what happened?" "I don't know the details," she said, speaking a little too quickly. "My cousin's friend lives on your floor, and she just mentioned something on social media about a crazy party and the landlord being furious. Probably nothing to do with you, just thought it was weird." "A party? On my floor? That's strange. It's usually so quiet." I tried to brush it off, but the seed of worry had been planted. I knew my immediate neighbors were a quiet elderly couple and a grad student who was never home. A crazy party seemed completely out of character for my building. After I hung up with Jenna, I tried calling my parents. My flight was at 6 a.m. the next day, and I wanted to confirm that Dad could pick me up. My call went straight to my mom's voicemail. I tried my dad's phone, same thing. That was unusual. They were always glued to their phones. I sent a text. "Hey, just wanted to confirm you can still get me from the airport tomorrow." My flight lands at 3 p.m., hours passed with no reply. I tried calling Ethan. His phone rang once and then went to a generic voicemail message that sounded like he'd recorded it in a wind tunnel. Now the unease was growing into a genuine, gnawing anxiety. The flight home was excruciating. With no Wi-Fi on the plane, I was trapped in a metal tube with nothing but my escalating fears. I replayed my conversation with Jenna. A noise complaint. A crazy party. I thought about the spare key sitting in my mother's purse. "It's just for emergencies," she had promised. But my family had a very flexible definition of an emergency. For Ethan, an emergency could be anything from running out of coffee to needing $20 for gas. I landed at 3 p.m. and turned my phone on the second the plane hit the tarmac. A flood of notifications came through, but none were from my family. No missed calls, no texts. My message from the night before was still marked as delivered, not read. Panic began to set in. I called my dad again. This time he answered, his voice sounding strained. "Sadie, hi honey, did you land?" "Dad, where are you? I've been trying to reach you all since last night. Are you coming to get me?" There was a long pause. I could hear my mother's muffled voice in the background, frantic and high-pitched. Something's come up, sweetie," he finally said, his usual smooth sales manager tone completely gone. "We can't make it. You should probably just grab a rideshare." "Something's come up. What's going on? Is everyone okay?" "Everyone's fine," he said, clearly lying. "Listen, your mother and I have to handle something. We'll talk later." And then he hung up. He just hung up. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a sound as cold and final as a slap in the face. I stood there in the bustling airport terminal, feeling a profound sense of dread wash over me. They were hiding something big. The unanswered calls, the vague excuses, Jenna's story about a party, it was all starting to connect in a way that made me feel sick. I booked a rideshare, my hands trembling as I typed in my address. The 45-minute drive home was the longest of my life. My mind raced, creating a dozen different scenarios, each worse than the last. Had there been a fire, a break-in, had someone gotten hurt? But deep down, a colder, more specific fear was taking shape. It involved my brother, his entitlement, my parents' inability to say no to him, and the spare key to my home. The key I had given them for emergencies only. As the car pulled onto my street, I'd see my building up ahead. It looked normal from the outside. No fire trucks, no police cars. For a fleeting moment, I felt a wave of relief. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was all a huge misunderstanding. But then the driver pulled up to the curb, and my relief evaporated, replaced by an icy horror. It wasn't something I saw on the building itself. It was something on my front door. Even from the car, I could see it, a bright orange piece of paper stuck right in the center of the door to my apartment. My sanctuary, my home. My legs felt like lead as I got out of the car and walked up the front steps of my building. The orange paper on my fourth-floor apartment door seemed to glow under the dim hallway lighting, a beacon of disaster. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of denial and fear. This couldn't be happening. I was a model tenant. I paid my rent on time, I never made noise, I kept to myself. Landlords loved me. As I got closer, the bold, black letters swam into focus. Eviction notice. The words hit me with physical force, knocking the air from my lungs. I ripped the paper off the door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely read the text. It detailed multiple lease violations, unauthorized occupants, excessive noise complaints resulting in police intervention, and significant damage to the property. It stated that my tenancy was terminated and I had 72 hours to vacate the premises. 72 hours. I had just gotten home from a 10-day trip. I was supposed to be unpacking, unwinding, settling back into my life. Instead, my life was being dismantled. My key slid into the lock, but turning it felt different. The door swung open not with its usual quiet click, but with a groan as if it were in pain. And then the smell hit me. A putrid combination of stale beer, cigarette smoke, and something vaguely like vomit. It was the smell of a frat house after a homecoming party, not my meticulously clean apartment. I stepped inside, and my denial finally shattered, replaced by a wave of pure, unadulterated rage. The place was destroyed. It wasn't just messy, it was desecrated. A large, dark stain, I prayed it was wine, was soaking into the center of my light gray area rug. Empty bottles and red plastic cups littered every surface. There was a hole punched in the drywall next to the TV, the size and shape of a fist. My favorite armchair, the one I had spent weeks ruffle-stirring, had a long cigarette burn down one of the arms. My bookshelf had been knocked over and my books were strewn across the floor, some with their spines broken and pages torn. My kitchen was a war zone. The sink was overflowing with dirty dishes, and a sticky residue covered the counters and floor. A cabinet door hung crookedly from a single hinge. I walked numbly toward my bedroom, pushing past a pile of discarded pizza boxes. I pushed the door open and my rage solidified into a cold, hard stone in my chest. My bed was unmade, the sheets rumpled and stained with what looked like makeup and dirt. Someone had been sleeping in my bed. Someone had been in my private space, my most personal sanctuary. On my nightstand next to a collection of empty beer cans was a promotional flyer for a band. Ethan's band. The flyer read, Cyclone's Fury album release afterparty, BYOB. Location, Sadie's Place. The rage was so intense it was blinding. It was a physical thing, a roaring fire in my veins that made my vision swim. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a small get-together that got out of hand. This was a deliberate, calculated act of disrespect. My brother had used my home. My parents had given him the key. They had all lied to me. I pulled out my phone, my fingers jabbing at the screen as I dialed my mother. She answered on the first ring, her voice sickeningly sweet. Sadie, you're home. How was the trip? How was the trip? I repeated, my voice dangerously low. How was the trip? My apartment is destroyed, Mom. I have an eviction notice on my door. What did you do? Silence. Then the sound of her taking a shaky breath. Now, Sadie, don't overreact. There was a little get-together. Ethan needed a place to celebrate his gig. A little get-together? I screamed into the phone, my voice cracking. There is a hole in my wall. My furniture is ruined. The entire place smells like a brewery. And I'm being evicted. This is not a little get-together. "Your father and I are on our way over now," she said, her tone shifting to one of placating martyrdom. "We'll help you clean up. Ethan feels just terrible about it." "Oh, he feels terrible?" I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Where is he? Put him on the phone, right now." "He's not here right now, dear. He was a little overwhelmed by the mess." Overwhelmed. My 25-year-old brother, who had thrown a party that resulted in thousands of dollars in damages and my eviction, was overwhelmed. The injustice of it was staggering. He caused the hurricane, now he couldn't bear to look at the wreckage, leaving me to stand in the middle of it. "You gave him the key, didn't you?" I asked, my voice flat and cold. "The key I gave you for emergencies." "Well, it was an emergency of a sort," she stammered. "His original venue fell through at the last minute. He would have been so disappointed. We didn't want to bother you while you were at your important conference." They didn't want to bother me. They chose to betray me instead. They prioritized my brother's fleeting disappointment over my home, my safety, my entire life. They had handed him the keys to my sanctuary, and he had burned it to the ground. In that moment, standing amidst the ruins of my life, the rage didn't subside. It sharpened. It focused. It turned from a wild, burning fire into a laser beam. They thought I would cry. They thought I would scream, and then, eventually, I would let them help me clean up the mess, both literally and figuratively. They thought that, like always, Ethan's actions would have no real consequences. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. My parents arrived 20 minutes later, armed with garbage bags and cleaning supplies, as if a few paper towels and some disinfectant spray could fix a hole in the wall and reverse an eviction. My father, Mark, walked in first, his face a mask of practiced regret. "Oh, Sadie, wow, this is worse than we thought." My mother, Eleanor, followed, her eyes darting around the room, not with horror, but with a critical eye, as if assessing the scale of the inconvenience. "Goodness gracious," she murmured. "Boys will be boys, I suppose. Well, no use crying over spilled milk. Let's get to work." The sheer audacity of her statement, the casual dismissal of the violation I had endured, sent another jolt of icy fury through me. "No," I said, my voice cutting through the air. "Don't touch anything." They both froze, looking at me in surprise. I was supposed to be the peacemaker, the responsible one who smoothed things over. I was not supposed to be the one giving orders. "What do you mean, honey?" My dad asked gently. "We're here to help." "You've helped enough," I snapped. "I need to document everything, for the landlord, for the insurance, for the police." Mentioning the police made Eleanor flinch. "Oh, Sadie, let's not be dramatic. There's no need to involve authorities. It's a family matter." It stopped being a family matter the moment my home was treated like a public venue and I was served an eviction notice, I retorted. "So please step outside." They hesitated, exchanging a look of disbelief. I had never spoken to them like this before. I pointed to the door. "Out now." To my surprise, they went, retreating to the hallway to whisper frantically to each other. Alone again, I took a deep, shuddering breath and pulled out my phone. My friend Jenna's advice from a long-ago conversation about a difficult landlord echoed in my head. Document everything. Photos, videos, receipts. Create a paper trail they can't argue with. I started to catalog the chaos. I began with a slow, sweeping video of the entire apartment, starting at the front door and moving through each room. I narrated in a calm, steady voice, pointing out every detail. Living room. Hole in the north wall, approximately 8 inches in diameter. Large, dark red stain on the area rug, covering about a third of the surface. Cigarette burn on the arm of the beige armchair. I was methodical, detached. The financial analyst in me took over, treating my ruined home like a disastrous balance sheet that needed to be audited. Each piece of damage was a liability, a debt that someone was going to have to pay. I took hundreds of photos, capturing every scratch on the floor, every chip in the paint, every broken glass and stained cushion. I photographed the crushed lampshade, the upended bookshelf, the sticky residue on my kitchen floor that was now attracting ants. In the bedroom, I photographed the stained sheets and the empty bottles on my nightstand. The sight of Ethan's banned flyer was particularly galling. I took a close-up shot of it, proof that this was not a random act of vandalism, but a party he had actively promoted, using my address as the location. The evidence was damning. After an hour of meticulous documentation, I had a comprehensive digital file of the destruction. I emailed a copy to myself and to Jenna with the subject line, "I'm going to need your help." Then I called my landlord, Mr. Henderson. He was an elderly man who was usually quite reasonable, but on the phone, his voice was stern. "Sadie, I'm deeply disappointed. I've had 3 separate tenants on your floor call me, not to mention the police report from Saturday night. I run a quiet building. This kind of behavior is unacceptable." I let him finish, and then I spoke, my voice devoid of the emotion that was churning inside me. "Mr. Henderson, I understand your position completely, and I am horrified by what happened, but I need you to know that I was not here. I was in San Diego for a work conference for the past 10 days. I just walked in the door 20 minutes ago to find my apartment in this state and your notice on my door." There was a pause on the line. "You weren't here?" "No, sir. I have my plane tickets, hotel receipts, and conference itinerary to prove it." What happened was that my family members used a spare key I had given them for emergencies and threw a party without my knowledge or consent. I am the victim here, just as much as you and the other tenants are. I could hear him processing this. "I've already photographed all the damages and I will be filing a police report against the person responsible." "Your own family?" he asked, a note of surprise in his voice. "Yes," I said firmly. "My own family. I intend to hold them fully, financially, and legally responsible for every cent of damage and any fees incurred. I am a good tenant and I want to keep my apartment. I am willing to pay for the repairs up front to get them done immediately, on the condition that I can then legally pursue my brother for full reimbursement." My proposal seemed to shift the dynamic. I wasn't making excuses or begging. I was presenting a solution, a business proposition. I was speaking his language. He was quiet for a long moment. "All right, Sadie," he said finally, his tone softening slightly. "Email me all your proof of travel and the photos you took. We'll talk tomorrow morning. I'm not making any promises, but we'll talk." Hanging up the phone, I felt the first glimmer of hope. It was a tiny spark in a vast ocean of anger, but it was there. My parents were still hovering in the hallway. I opened the door. "I need a full list of every person Ethan invited to this party," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. My mother started to protest. "Sadie, you can't possibly mean to?" "I do," I interrupted. "He advertised my address. He is liable. Anyone who caused specific damage is also liable. So you can either give me the list, or I will get it from the police when I hand over his flyer." My father sighed, looking suddenly very old. "Just give her the list, Alina." For the first time, my mother looked at me with something other than condescending pity. It was fear. The catalog of chaos was complete, and the audit was about to begin. The next morning, I met with Mr. Henderson in his small, cluttered office in the basement of the building. I came prepared. I had a folder containing printouts of my flight confirmations, hotel bills, and conference agenda. I had a USB drive with all 274 photos and the narrated video tour of the damage, and I had a preliminary estimate for repairs from a 24-hour contractor I'd called at dawn. He reviewed everything in silence, his expression grim. "The police report mentions your brother by name," he said, looking up from his papers. "Apparently, he was the one who answered the door when they arrived." This was news to me, and it was a crucial piece of the puzzle. Ethan couldn't claim he wasn't there or that things just got out of hand. The police had placed him at the scene. "I want to make this right, Mr. Henderson," I reiterated. "I love my apartment, and I have never violated the terms of my lease. I am prepared to sign a legally binding agreement to cover all repair costs and to pay a penalty for the disturbance to my neighbors." Jenna had coached me on this. She said landlords care about 2 things, their property and their money. By appealing to both, I had a fighting chance. After another 30 minutes of negotiation, we had a deal. He agreed to rescind the eviction notice under several conditions. First, all damages had to be repaired to his satisfaction within 2 weeks. Second, I had to pay a $2,500 building fine for the lease violations. Third, my parents and my brother were to be permanently banned from the property. I agreed without hesitation. The total estimated cost, including the fine, was just over $9,000. It was a staggering amount of money, a significant portion of my savings, but I saw it as an investment in getting my life back. With the immediate threat of homelessness averted, I shifted my focus to the next phase of the plan. I wasn't just going to get my money back. I was going to exact a price for the betrayal that went far beyond dollars and cents. Jenna was my strategic partner in this. We met at a coffee shop, and I laid out all the documents. "This is incredible," she said, shaking her head as she scrolled through the photos on her laptop. "He didn't just have a party, he tried to demolish the place." "My parents are already starting the campaign to get me to forgive him," I said, sipping my coffee. "My mom called this morning and said Ethan is racked with guilt and that I should be the bigger person. Let me guess, their solution is that you pay for everything and Ethan promises to be more careful next time?" Jenna asked. Dryly, "Pretty much. They offered to help me out with a couple $100. We spent the next 2 hours crafting a meticulous plan. It was a two-pronged attack, financial and familial. The financial part was straightforward. Jenna helped me draft a formal demand letter to be sent to Ethan via certified mail. It was a terrifyingly official document, citing civil codes related to property damage and financial liability. It detailed every single item of damage, its estimated repair or replacement cost, and the $2,500 building fine. The grand total came to $9,347.50. The letter gave him 30 days to arrange a payment plan with me. If he failed to respond, the letter stated I would file a claim against him in small claims court, where I would also seek damages for emotional distress. We both knew Ethan didn't have $10,000. He barely had $10, which led to the second part of the plan, the familial leverage. My parents had always enabled Ethan because they never had to bear the true cost of his irresponsibility. I was about to change that. My father, Mark, had a deep-seated obsession with maintaining the image of a perfect, successful family. He was also nearing retirement and had spent decades building a comfortable nest egg with my mother. My mother, Alina, prided herself on being a pillar of her community, her church group, her book club, her volunteer committees. Their social standing was paramount. My plan was to make Ethan's debt their public shame. I created a detailed invoice, itemizing every single cost. It wasn't a legal document like the demand letter, it was a prop. It was printed on high-quality paper, looking as professional as the financial reports I prepared at work. The bill to section listed Ethan's full name, with my parents' names listed below his as financial guarantors. The final piece of the plan was the timing. My parents' 35th wedding anniversary was in 3 weeks. They were planning a big dinner party at their house, inviting all their closest friends and family, the very people whose opinions they valued most. This party would be my stage. I called my mother a few days after she received a copy of the demand letter I had also sent to her house. As expected, she was furious. "Sadie, this is an outrage. You can't sue your own brother. We are your family." "He is an adult who committed a crime in my home," I responded calmly. "He is responsible for the consequences. You and Dad are responsible for giving him the means to do it. The bill stands." "We will not give him a penny for this nonsense," she shrieked. "Then I will see him in court," I said, "and I will have to explain to a judge and anyone else who asks why my family believes that destroying my home is acceptable behavior. I'm sure your friends from the church committee would find that story fascinating." The threat hung in the air, and I knew it had hit its mark. "I will be at your anniversary dinner," I continued, my voice sweet as poison. "I have a special gift for you both. Please make sure Ethan is there. It's important that we present a united front as a family, isn't it?" I knew they wouldn't dare uninvite me. It would raise too many questions. They would force Ethan to be there, hoping they could ambush me and bully me into dropping the whole thing before the party started. They had no idea that they weren't planning an intervention. They were walking into an ambush of my own design. The price of betrayal was set at $9,347.50, but the interest was going to be paid in public humiliation. I spent the next 3 weeks living out of a suitcase in my own apartment while contractors worked around me. The sounds of sanding, sawing, and painting became the soundtrack to my life. I oversaw every detail, ensuring the repairs were perfect. The stained rug was replaced. The hole in the wall was patched and painted so seamlessly you couldn't tell it had ever been there. The broken kitchen cabinet was fixed. With each repair, I felt a piece of my stolen peace returning. I paid every bill up front, keeping a meticulous file of receipts. During this time, my family alternated between tactics. First came the pleading calls from my father. "Sadie, honey, can't we just put this behind us? Your mother is a wreck. Think about what this is doing to our family." When that didn't work, my mother tried guilt. "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by tearing your family apart over some furniture?" Finally, they sent Ethan himself to talk to me. He showed up at my door one evening, looking pathetic. "Sadie, I'm so sorry," he mumbled, staring at his shoes. "I never meant for it to get this crazy." "Did you mean to use my apartment without asking?" I asked, my arms crossed. "Did you mean to advertise my private address on a flyer? Did you mean to just leave the mess for me to discover?" "It was a mistake," he whined. "I don't have that kind of money. You're going to ruin my life." My life was TTY ruined when I came home to an eviction notice, I replied coldly. "You have until the anniversary dinner to tell me how you're going to pay me back. Otherwise, the conversation is over." He left, dejected. I knew my parents had put him up to it, and his half-hearted apology only strengthened my resolve. The night of the anniversary party, I dressed carefully. I chose a simple but elegant black dress. I looked poised, successful, and completely in control. I walked into my parents' home holding a beautifully wrapped gift. The house was filled with their friends, about 30 people in total. My parents greeted me at the door, their smiles tight and forced. "Sadie, you came," my mother said. "We were so worried you wouldn't." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied sweetly. I saw Ethan lurking by the fireplace, looking pale and nervous. He avoided my gaze. I mingled for a while, making small talk with my parents' friends, people who had known me since I was a child. They all commented on how well I was doing, how proud my parents must be. With each comment, I could see my parents squirm. Dinner was a lavish affair. After the main course, my father stood up to make a toast. He spoke about his 35 years with my mother, about the importance of family, love, and forgiveness. He kept glancing at me, his words heavy with meaning. "Family is everything," he concluded. "It's about being there for each other through thick and thin, no matter what." The guests applauded warmly. This was my cue. I stood up, holding my gift. "I'd like to say a few words as well, if I may." All eyes turned to me. My parents and Ethan looked like they were about to be sick. "Dad, your words about family and being there for each other are so true," I began, my voice clear and strong. "Family is all about support, trust, and accountability. It's about teaching your children right from wrong and ensuring they take responsibility for their actions. Which brings me to my gift." I walked over to my parents and handed them the beautifully wrapped box. "This is a gift not just for you, but for the whole family. It's a celebration of a new chapter for us." My mother unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a simple, elegant picture frame. But instead of a photo, the frame contained the professional invoice I had created. The itemized list of damages, the building fine, and the grand total $9,347.50 were all clearly visible. At the bottom, in the notes section, I had written, "A lesson in responsibility for Ethan. To be paid in full." A collective gasp went through the room as the people sitting near my mother saw what was in the frame. My aunt, sitting next to her, leaned over to read it and her eyes widened. "What on earth is this?" she whispered. I turned to address the room. "A few weeks ago, while I was away on a business trip, my parents gave my brother a key to my apartment. He threw a massive party that caused over $9,000 in damages and got me served with an eviction notice." The room fell into a stunned silence. I could feel the weight of 30 pairs of eyes on me, on my parents, on Ethan. "I was told that family should forgive," I continued, my gaze locking with my father's. "But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. For 3 weeks, my family has tried to convince me to absorb this cost myself, to protect my brother from the consequences of his destructive behavior. They believe his comfort is more important than my financial stability and my home." I let the words hang in the air. My mother's face was white with fury and humiliation. My father looked utterly defeated. Ethan looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "So, my anniversary gift to my parents is the gift of clarity," I said, my voice ringing with finality. "This invoice is a reminder of the true cost of their enabling. They can either maintain their perfect family image and pay the bill for the son they've refused to hold accountable, or they can explain to all of you, their dearest friends, why they believe their daughter should be financially ruined by her own brother. I looked directly at Ethan. And as for you, the small claims court filing goes in on Monday unless I have a payment plan from you or a check from Mom and Dad by tomorrow at noon. With that, I picked up my purse. Thank you all for letting me share. Happy anniversary. I turned and walked out of the house, leaving a crater of shocked silence behind me. The final invoice had been delivered. The debt was no longer just mine to bear. It was now a matter of public record among the very people whose opinions my parents cherished most. The drive away from my parents' house felt like a physical release. It was as if I had been carrying a 100-pound weight on my shoulders for years, and I had finally set it down. I didn't know what the immediate fallout would be, but for the first time, I felt truly free of their expectations and manipulations. I half expected a barrage of angry calls and texts, but my phone remained silent for the rest of the night. The silence was more telling than any angry outburst could have been. It meant they were in damage control mode. They weren't thinking about me or what they had done. They were thinking about how to manage the social fallout with their friends. The next morning, at precisely 11:45 a.m., my phone rang. It was my father. His voice was tired, stripped of all its usual sales pitch charm. "Your mother and I are at the bank," he said flatly. "We are transferring the full amount to your account, $9,347.50. I didn't say thank you. I simply said, okay. "I hope you're happy, Sadie," he added, a hint of bitterness creeping in. "You've made your point. You've humiliated us in front of everyone we know." "What I did," I replied calmly, "was refuse to be a victim of your irresponsibility. The humiliation was a direct consequence of your own choices, not mine. You chose to betray my trust. You chose to enable Ethan. You chose to value your image over my well-being. This isn't my victory. This is your bill." There was nothing left for him to say. He hung up. An hour later, a notification from my banking app confirmed the transfer. Seeing the money in my account wasn't a moment of triumph, but one of sober relief. It was the closing of a painful chapter. I had not only restored my savings, but I had also reclaimed my self-respect. The relationship with my parents and brother was, for all intents and purposes, over. They had made it clear that they would never see my side, only their own public shame. We didn't speak for months. When holidays and birthdays passed without a word, it became clear that the damage was irreparable. The silence was painful at first, a hollow ache where a family used to be. But slowly, that ache was replaced by a sense of peace. My apartment was no longer just a place I lived. It was a fortress of my own making, a true sanctuary. I had the locks changed the day after the party. I built new walls, both literally and figuratively. My friendship with Jenna deepened. She had been my ally and strategist, and she celebrated my victory as if it were her own. We spent evenings in my beautifully restored apartment, drinking wine and talking about our futures. My world became smaller, but it also became more authentic. I was surrounded only by people who respected and supported me. A few months later, I got a call from my aunt, my mother's sister. She had been at the dinner party. "Sadie, I just wanted to call and say that I am so proud of you," she said, her voice warm. "Your parents are telling everyone a highly edited version of that night, but most of us saw the truth. What you did took incredible courage." Her words were a balm. It was validating to know that I wasn't the villain they were painting me to be. She told me that Ethan had finally moved out of his parents' house. Without their constant financial safety net, he'd been forced to get a second job and was reportedly taking his music more seriously, now that he had to pay his own way. It seemed the lesson in responsibility had perhaps started to sink in. I didn't feel any satisfaction from this news, only a distant sadness for the brother I once had, and for the family we could have been if they had just been willing to respect me. Life moved on. I excelled at work and earned the promotion I had been hoping for. I started dating someone new, a kind and stable man who was horrified when I told him the story, and who understood immediately why boundaries were so important to me. My life was becoming my own, built on a new foundation of self-worth and mutual respect. I learned that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to let them go. You can't force people to see their own toxicity. You can't make them respect you. All you can do is build your own walls, lock your own doors, and protect the peaceful life you have built for yourself. My rage didn't disappear overnight, but it transformed. It was no longer a blinding fire but a pilot light, a constant, quiet source of strength that reminded me of what I had overcome. It reminded me that I was capable of standing up for myself, of drawing a line in the sand, and of demanding the respect I deserved. My apartment was quiet now, the only sound the familiar, gentle hiss of the radiator, a sound I had come to love. It was the sound of peace, the sound of home.